What's up, guys? Today I'm going to be showing you one of my more interesting warrior tanking builds that involves Rampage. The whole reason I had to come up with this is because our very top DPS in the guild are starting to get very geared. They're doing tons of damage, and they are pretty hard to keep threat off of at this point. My old build, which involved Bolstering Strike and a very defensive build. Bolstering Strike, if you don't know, is a threat loss, but if you can run it and get away with it and still hold constant threat, it's a good thing to do because it's that shield healing and it's nice. But as of recently, I've had to take Bolstering Strike off my bar, at least until I catch up in gear to some of these guys that have 6 or 7 epics. So, in the meantime, a lot of people have been asking, how do I keep threat as a warrior? And this is the best build I've come up with that is just pure threat god awesomeness. And it's also pretty good damage. If you're running this tanking build, you're basically half a DPS. I would say that even on trash, you might actually be a competitive DPS with just the way warriors are and how good they are on trash. I beat a stalker in trash DPS one time. He was in the wrong spec, but still, the DPS is nothing to be fucked with. And adding a little bit of DPS to the group is definitely a good raid utility. So let's get into the build. Action set. Tier 5 Rampage. Yes, Tier 5 Rampage. Now, the reason why you want to go Tier 5 Rampage is because the Tier 4 bonus is going to make you do more damage when you're above 750 kinetic energy. That is the key. You do not want to use Rampage unless you are above 750 kinetic energy. And as a tank, this is very easy. Because with this current build, I'm not running Jolt. So the only things I'm spending... Well, you can't really see it, but... Oh, yeah, you can right there. This current build... I'm not running Jolt, so the only time my kinetic energy goes down is when I'm using Rampage, and it only goes down to, I don't know, 800, 900. It definitely doesn't ever go anywhere close to 750. So once you max out your kinetic energy, you can just Rampage and not worry about it. So that's the kicker. You gotta... I think you may be able to get away with this without running Tier 4 Rampage, but I don't know. I think if you're gonna run it, you might as well go Tier 5, Tier 4. I'm not sure this extra free point, I just put it here because I thought it might be more useful than putting it into Atomic Spear. I haven't done the math on it, maybe it's worse, I don't know, but that's what I'm doing. Next, we have Tier 8 Menacing Strike. That's just a really good tanking ability, good threat, you use it frequently, it can heal you, it's pretty nice. Atomic Spear, definitely good to use, it's the highest threat per second ability for warrior tanking. It's off the global cooldown if you use an ability before it, so if I do Menacing Strike, an Atomic Spear directly after, the Atomic Spear is off the global cooldown. So, little warrior tip, use Atomic Spear while you're on global cooldown, and it's free. You use it when you're... So yeah, I like the ability. It's kind of hard to explain, but if you do Atomic Spear and then Menacing Strike, it'll be Atomic Spear, Global, Menacing Strike. But if you do Menacing Strike, then Atomic Spear, it's Menacing Strike, Atomic Spear, and then you'll be on the global from the previous Menacing Strike. Atomic Spear is a great ability, so use it. Next up, Polarity Field. I'm running Tier 8 on that. It's a pretty good threat per second ability. If you get it on 2 foes, it's insane threat per second. And the Tier 8 bonus with the 7% more armor, it's pretty nice. So that's why I'm running that. More survivability. It's got that range on it, which is really nice for pulling mobs. And overall, it's a pretty good ability. I like it. Atomic Surge for if, oh shit, you lose threat. Or if a boss has a threat drop modifier, or anything like that. Atomic Surge is always nice to have. Sometimes you can take it off your bar, whatever. Next up, we have Shield Burst. Now, I want to explain why I like this ability, because so many people come into my stream and say, why are you using Shield Burst? Why are you using Shield Burst? And a lot of people don't know about the little intricacies of the ability. So, the Shield Burst is very similar to Atomic Spear in the fact that it is not on global cooldown if you use an ability before it. So, if I do Menacing Strikes, and while on that Menacing Strike global cooldown, I do Shield Burst, then it's free. So if you use Shield Burst correctly, it is free damage, free healing, free threat. It's awesome. Now, if you're running with a Spell Slinger or Esper Healer, Shield Burst is not as good, because the way Shield Burst works is that your shields have to be refreshed. So your shield goes down the first time, boom, Shield Burst works perfectly fine. But if your shield is never healed at all, then it will never proc again. So if you're running Bolstering Strike, well, sometimes Bolstering Strike's a bit weird, but basically if you're with a medic healer, Shield Burst is amazing. It's phenomenal. I would absolutely encourage you to run Shield Burst with the medic because it's constantly refreshing, constantly going off, giving you that free shielding, free damage, and free threat. If you don't need it, you don't need it. Then I would recommend, I mean, there's plenty of other great things you can go with. It's most definitely not mandatory. Sometimes I take it off my bar as well for a CC break, defense grid, flashbang for 3 interrupts. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of other stuff you can run. I like Shield Burst. It's okay, but I definitely would not say it's mandatory. But if you can run it or you want to run it, give it a shot. It's definitely not a bad ability. Hopefully they fix some of the bugs with it. But that slot, the number 2 slot right here, or whatever slot this is, I guess it's number 6, that's up to you. You can do whatever you want to with that. Now onto utility. I'm running 2 interrupts. I'm running grapple and kick. Both of these are on the exact same cooldown, and if you run cooldown reduction, which I recommend, they're both on a 17-second cooldown. Absolutely phenomenal. Super powerful. For veteran dungeons, this is a super powerful thing to do. I wasn't doing this from the start, was seeing that other warriors were, and immediately changed to it. And once I changed to it, best thing I've ever done. Having 2 interrupts is absolutely amazing. If you take Shield Burst off your bar, I'm actually going to get away from this loud noise in game. If you take Shield Burst off your bar and go with Flashbang, you can actually get 3 interrupts. So, yeah, I mean, warrior interrupts are top notch. Probably the best in the game next to Stalkers. I think they might even be better when it comes to how early they are, how quickly they come up, and they're both on the exact same cooldown. These aren't like 17 seconds, like one's not 18 and one's 17. They're both 17 seconds on the dot. It's awesome. So if you're not running 2 interrupts as a DPS or a tank for veterans, do it. It's good. Now on to amps. Now, amps, I would strongly recommend that everyone take this support tree that I've got right here. I think this is the best way you can go for warrior tanking. Impenetrable, 2 interrupt armor when you pop your innate. I don't think that's that great at all. I definitely don't think it's worth 4 points. And Bolstering Strike, again, if you can run it and you're holding threat, if you're equally geared to all the people you're trying to hold threat off of, then run it. If you're not, then don't. It's up to you. I am trying to get back to the point to where I can run Bolstering Strike against the very top DPS in my guild, but in my opinion, the slight defensive gain I get from Bolstering Strike doesn't outweigh our DPS being able to go as hard as they want to, as often as they want to, and just the whole goal is to have the DPS only worrying about doing the most damage as possible and not getting hit by telegraphs. That's the whole point. So having DPS not have to look at their threat meter is the goal. So yeah, I recommend this support. It's got great defensives. I am in my current gear set, I believe I am deflect critical capped. I hope the cap is 15. I've heard it is. Yeah, so that's why I go into deflect crit, support power, critical hit, kinetic energy. All these are pretty much a given. Those are just the best defensives you can get. So I really recommend this support loadout right here. Now, strike through, I also recommend speccing it a strike through because the strike through on the tanking gear is horrible. If there was 6 points I could take into strike through, I would, because strike through as a tank sucks. God, you get deflected so much, it's insane. If there really were 3 more points up here for strike through, I would spec into them, but there aren't. So I'd recommend going into cooldown reduction. Cooldown reduction is currently bugged for warriors. That is being fixed. It might have been fixed in the patch. No, it wasn't fixed in the patch, but it's not currently affecting abilities you tier into. So polarity field right now is not being affected by cooldown reduction because I'm spec'd into it. Even though it's bugged, I still think it's very powerful. It's going to make your atomic spear 9 seconds instead of 10 seconds. It's going to make shield burst 13 instead of 15. Atomic surge 17 instead of 20. It's just a really, really good set of amps to spec into. And when it gets fixed, when my polarity field goes down to, what would it be, 13 seconds, right? Yeah, 13 seconds. It'll be nice. So I still, even with it being bugged, I recommend cooldown reduction. Now these 2 points right here, shield capacity. I don't know if I'm a huge fan. Maybe I'll be more of a fan of it when raiding starts up and I'll have a dedicated shield healer that's going to be healing me. But right now in veterans, I thought about maybe taking these 2 points from shield capacity and maybe putting them into crit. Maybe it's a little bit more threat. I currently don't have any threat issues in this build that I'm running right now. But if you did, a little bit more crit, is going to get you a little bit more threat. Damage is threat. Crits are threat. Yeah, it's not bad by any means, and 6% more shields isn't really that great, especially if you're running with a medic or an Esper or Slinger, where your shields are just constantly down no matter what after the first 10 seconds. So, yeah, so that's it for amps and tiers. Now, let's show you a little bit of how it works. So, the basic idea is you're going to be wanting to use your support abilities, your Polarity Field, your Menacing Strikes, your Atomic Spear, Shield Burst, whatever you're using for your support. And when your kinetic energy maxes out, that's when you want to do your Rampage. Now, you might be able to get away with it doing it at 900, but I just like to get to 1,000 just to play it safe, and just in case I have to run away from the boss and I might lose some kinetic energy. I definitely don't want my kinetic buffer to fall off and lose the resistances. Where is it? I don't want that to ever. I don't ever want to fall below 500 kinetic energy. So that includes like kiting a boss around or whatever that may be. That's why I like to stay at 1,000, just to be safe, just in case it gets stunned, lose my weapon, whatever it may be. So, yeah, start up, boom, Polarity Field, Menacing Strike, Menacing Strike, Menacing Strike. I wait till 1,000, then I start going into my rampages. I was a dumbass and accidentally did one more Menacing Strike there. But basically, the whole idea is that Rampage does more threat per second than Menacing Strike does, because it does more damage quicker. And even though Menacing Strike has this 130% threat bonus, it is not as good as Rampage. So Menacing Strike only does 30% more threat than every other ability. Now Rampage does much more damage than Menacing Strike does. And it does it in a much faster period. So damage is threat, and that's going to mean you're going to be doing more threat per second and more damage per second. So DPS is utility. A lot of people might be thinking like, oh, you know, you could have put whatever in this and not gotten Rampage or whatever. Damage is very important as well. So you can't forget about that. You're going to be doing a good bit of damage in this tanking spec. It's a ton of fun to play. I think you guys get the idea. The whole point is to just do Rampage over Menacing Strikes. When you're above 750 kinetic energy, it'll be more threat per second. And also you want to be doing that in coordination with your Atomic Spears and stuff like that. That's the whole point. It's just replacing Rampage over Menacing Strike when Rampage is up. Now I'm going to show you guys how this build works in practice. Everybody can do good threat per second on a dummy, but all that matters is how it actually performs in the heat of the moment. So here you can see Master Chief doing about 25k, 30k DPS. I can't really see, but that would be my guess. He does a ton of DPS on Trash. I think on 5 packs I've seen him get up to about 35k. So yeah, he's a savage DPS, but this build is keeping the threat on me. I've got a pretty solid lead on him too by about 35-40% it looks like. And yeah, doing pretty good damage myself. So on Trash, this build definitely works. Gonna skip forward to a boss. Works on the bosses too, even on a boss where they get constant moment of opportunities. This build can still keep up with it. The only thing you really give up with this build is an LAS slot. A lot of people aren't using Bolstering Strike to begin with right now, so if you're already not using it, you're not giving up anything. You still have your full defensive loadout, full defensive amps. So yeah, and you pick up some raid, and dungeon DPS, and the DPS gain for the tank is definitely noticeable. I mean, you're just going to be melting mobs just that much faster, and especially when you're going for those silver and gold runs, it's really going to help. And DPS is raid utility. I know I said that earlier in the video, but it's most definitely a raid utility. Here we come into the first boss. As you can see, we're going to get a moment of opportunity there. Boom. And everybody's DPS. I don't know what the moment of opportunity is. I don't know if it's 1.5 or 2 times more damage, but it's a lot. And still holding threat just fine. Boom. Another moo. Still holding threat just fine. These DPS have just been tunneling the boss, 100% uptime, and still I've got a massive threat lead, no problem. On to the wind boss. This is a boss where I don't have very much uptime. Lots of craziness with tornadoes and melee having to move out of stuff that range don't really have to move out of. And even on this fight, still no threat issues. Sometimes warriors in general, just the warrior class, just by design, will have some threat issues in certain areas, like for example pulling mobs back. Like right here is a very good example of where just the warrior class in general kind of is annoying if you compare it to an engineer, but luckily I had threat on that one and pulled it back once it stopped casting. That's really the biggest weakness of warrior tanks, is that we suck at moving mobs backwards. Like, if we have to pull a mob backward into a corner, it's AIDS. So, yeah. Anyway, as you can see, build works just fine, even against the most savage of DPS. Oh, I failed right there. Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I can think of that will pull threat off you is if a spell slinger goes 4 spell surge right off the start of a pull. That will absolutely pull threat, 100%. Other than that, even if somebody pulls threat, I still run atomic surge for that. Occasionally, you will get some early deflects. Early deflects are the worst thing ever. I would recommend if you're a tank, call out when you get deflected early in a pull. Like if your initial polarity field gets deflected, scream that out. I make a very good habit of that, just to let the DPS know, hey, chill it for a second. I got some bad luck. So, yeah. Anyway, let me know what you guys think of this build. I am by no means the warrior guru master. If somebody has an improvement to this, please let me know. I'm just as interested in it as you are. So, yeah. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time.